Greetings, everyone. You're all welcome to the second edition of the Women in Monitoring and Evaluation Forum, which is being organized by the Ghana Monitoring and Evaluation Forum and Women in Research Monitoring, Evaluation and Learning. So this year's edition is themed Sisters Keepers, Women Helping Each Other Grow in AI. And the theme was inspired by the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, mainly focusing on empowering women to harness ICT or AI as a powerful tool for professional advancement and personal well-being. It's a pleasure to see you all here. And before we dive into the discussion for today, I'd like to invite Anita Jando. Anita Jando, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So Anita Jando will just give a short opening prayer and then we can continue with the rest of the program. Anita?
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. So in the mood of prayer, I want to commit our meeting into the hands of the Most High. Our Lord and Master, we are grateful for today. We are grateful for gathering us here in this meeting. We are asking that you direct our discussions. You help us to open our mind and understand whatever we are discussing here. Help us to contribute our experiences fruitfully. We also pray that we each benefit from this meeting as individuals and as collectively as women in MNE. May your glory shine through our discussions here, and may your will be done. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Anita. All right, so I'd like to just share what the agenda is going to look like today. So please permit me to share my screen. Just give me a second. Okay. Is my screen visible? I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we've done the opening prayer. So we'll move on to icebreakers. And then afterwards, we'll have the welcome address and purpose of gathering and a brief on the 16 days of activism against violence. And then we would have introduction of panelists, and then we'll dive straight into the panel discussion. And then we'll have a Q&A session from inviting questions from participants. We'll then have the vote of thanks and announcements, and then we'll end with a closing prayer. So just to engage us a little bit, we all know that we are in the Christmas season. And so I'd like us to share in the chat, or if you'd want to also speak, just to share which of these Christmas items you have at home at the moment, or are planning to get in preparation for the Christmas. And also you can suggest anything that is missing from this list that should be part of the Christmas festivities. So I'm just giving you a couple of minutes to think about the Christmas items you have at home, or any that you feel should be part of this list. It will be interesting to hear from you or to read in the chat what you have. So this is our first icebreaker activity. Are there any of us here who have Christmas sweaters, particularly those in the temperate regions? Or have we decorated our Christmas trees? So personally, I have a decorated Christmas tree at home. Or do we have a nativity scene? Okay, so I can see someone has shared in the chat. So from Esther Birungi, she said she has Christmas hats, greeting cards, Christmas tree, and lights. Okay, Lauren said, we have a tree we just decorated this weekend. That's nice. Nana says, Christmas food and cookies. Great. Farida said, Christmas dress. Yeah. Any more? Okay, we can move on to the next icebreaker activity, which is for us to share any Christmas carols that we enjoy listening to or we like to sing, or any favorite Christmas albums that we have at home. You can share in the chat, or you can also unmute and maybe give us a line of the song that you enjoy or that reminds you of Christmas a lot. Okay, so I still see.
Oh my God, I've lost it. But oh, holy night, oh no.
Oh, Holy Night, right? Is that the one? Okay. All right, so a few Christmas carols coming in. So we have Joy to the World. Okay, Joy to the World, good. Any other? Okay, so we can keep them coming. But for the sake of time, we'll just move on to the final icebreaker, which is more related to what we're going to discuss today. So I'd like to find out from us all what AI tools you're familiar with. So I've listed a few here. So we have ChatGPT, we have Meta AI, we have Firefly, we have Grammarly. So you can share in the chat any that you might have heard of, any that you would like to try your hands on, any that you are learning to use. Okay, so we have Lauren who said Julius.ai, great for visualizations. That's great. I'd like to try that one. Safiato said ChatGPT. Okay, any more? Okay, Anita said ChatGPT, Meta AI, and Grammarly. Yeah, and she wants to learn others as well. Esther says Otter.ai and Meta AI. Okay, Ingesang said I've heard of Grammarly. Others are new to her. Okay, any more? Okay. Perfect Brighter.ai. Interesting. Interesting one there from Excellencio. Then there's Jenny.ai. McDonald said Quillbot. Yeah, I think I've heard of that one. There are a number of them that people are sharing that are new to me as well. So I'm curious to find out more about them. Interesting. It's interesting to know what is out there. All right, so let's keep them coming. So for the sake of time, we'll end our icebreaker activities for now. And at this juncture, I would like to invite Madam Patience. Are you here? To give us the welcome address and opening. But before she comes, I'll just read her bio shortly. So Patience Ajari Ashi works as a gender diversity, social development, and monitoring and evaluation consultant. She has pursued this profession for over 25 years. She's also the co-founder and president of Intern Connect Africa, a soft skills and capacity building organization targeting young professionals. She serves as a board member of the Ghana Monitoring and Evaluation Forum. All right, Madam Patience, please, are you here?
Yeah.
All right, there she is. Hello.
Can you hear? Hi, can you hear me? I hope.
Yes, please. Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, and I'm delighted to have joined. Apart from the initial hitch of trying to get on, I'm so excited that I'm here eventually. And as the bio says, I've been with GMEF for quite a while, and I'm delighted to be standing in for Didi. Apologies, the networks are not too good where I am, so just pardon me for time. Keeps getting in and out. But on behalf of GMEF, I'm delighted to welcome all parts of this interesting meeting. WIME is a view on this one as a network with over 200 on because some of our members work outside. What we do is to share, our insights and our experiences on the art and practice of monitoring and evaluation, and is to support continuing monitoring and evaluation on the development programming. We also support evidence-based decision-making in the occasion, and as part of the celebration of the 16 days of activism against gender, we are delighted to also encourage all of us to be mindful of all actions that are being taken to fight against gender violence here in Ghana generally. On individual, community of practice, we call on you on this occasion to also be part of all, actions and activities to support the redress of gender-based violence. And all of you, I said thank you for being a part of this, and I would hand over to the presenters and the organizers to take it from there. So from GMEF and all of us, congratulations for being part of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Madam Patience for the opening and for welcoming us all to today's Women in Monitoring and Evaluation Forum. Thank you so much. All right, so I think that we've gotten to a very interesting part of our session today, which is our panel discussion. And we have an exciting lineup of very accomplished speakers who will be sharing their thoughts on the theme and the work that they are doing. Okay, so before I invite them, I will quickly go through their profile so we know who we have in our midst. All right, so please permit me to share my screen once again. So for today's panel, we have, first of all, Amina Salifu, who is a PhD candidate in artificial intelligence with the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana. And she's a member of the Generations Impact. So Amina Salifu, you're welcome. We're pleased to have you. Next, we also have Benedicta Dawson-Amoah, who is a monitoring and evaluation professional with working experience in international development. She holds a BSc in statistics from KNUST and an MSc in data inequality and society from the University of Edinburgh, with a research focus on examining the emergence of AI in Ghana health service delivery. Currently, as the Data and Social Impact Officer at Kindred, Benedicta plays a key role in tracking project outcomes and leads evaluation studies to assess the impact of STOs and Kindred's program interventions. She envisions a world where data drives better decision-making, improves lives, and ensures the sustainability of project impact. Benedicta, you're welcome. And then we have Jenean Pretorius, who is a senior monitoring and evaluations specialist and lead of capacity strengthening business line at the Center for Learning on Evaluation and Results, Anglophone Africa, at the University of the Witwatersrand, or University of Wits in Johannesburg, South Africa. She has a BA in politics and international relations and a master's in management, specializing in public policy, and currently reading for a PhD in inclusive education at Wits University. She has worked across the private, public, and NGO sectors over the past 15 years. Her core functioning at CLARE AA includes facilitation and training, curriculum reviews and development, and overall capacity building at country and institutional levels. Her country program work includes Eswatini, Malawi, Lesotho, Rwanda, Zambia, Liberia, Malaysia, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. Her research areas of interest are at the nexus between development, adaptive capacities, and innovation for sustainability. In her rare spare time, she writes fiction and poetry. Jenean, you're welcome. And then we have Ruth Orbach. She's the director of MEL, a GSMA Mobile for Development. So Ruth is an experienced monitoring, evaluation, and learning MEL practitioner and strategist with 14 years in the international development, digital innovation, and social impact sectors. As director of monitoring, evaluation, and learning at GSMA, Ruth drives strategies to assess and amplify the impact of mobile technology solutions in low and middle income countries. GSMA's Mobile for Development Foundation partners with mobile operators and stakeholders to deliver digital solutions that promote financial inclusion, climate resilience, and socioeconomic growth. Previously, Ruth held senior MEL roles at Zinc Network, Save the Children International, Care Canada, and Africa Leadership Academy, managing programs across Africa, the UK, and globally. Thank you for joining us, Ruth. You're also welcome. So participants, let's welcome our wonderful panelists as we engage them in a very enriching discussion on our theme, which is Sisters Keepers, Women Helping Each Other Grow in AI. All right, so we can dive straight in. So I'd like to, first of all, find out from our panelists what motivated or inspired them to take on the professions that they're currently in. So I'll start with Amina. Amina, are you here with us, please?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Great to hear you.
Yeah, hello, good evening from my end, and sorry for joining late.
Good evening.
So
Yeah.
thank you for adding me to these great women. I think I have a lot to learn from them, but before them, I'll start with the question: what actually motivated me to work in AI space? So I'm a very curious type. Actually, I studied mathematics and I had a lot of challenge with my lecturers and staffs where I used to complain that, oh, you just teach us only mathematics, mathematics. What is the benefit of mathematics? How do we solve real world problems with the models that we are developing? So from that curiosity and a lot of questions, I realized that AI and then other tangible things that you can touch and feel can actually solve my problems, which actually pushed me into the AI space where currently I'm working on ascent classification. Taking Zoom, for instance, Zoom has actually introduced a transcription where as I'm speaking, it transcribes what I'm saying. But when you look at the word error rate, especially with non-native English speakers, you realize that there's a higher error rate. So what I'm doing is to come up with robust architectures and the models to actually solve real world problem with this AI tools that I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you too, Amina, for sharing and for starting us off. Please, I'll move on to Benedicta.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Linda. Nice to finally see you. And thank you so much for accommodating my time. Apologies for being late. I just needed to rush from work and come in here, but I'm happy to speak on this panel with equally able panelists here. And thank you, Amina, for starting off. I would say that my journey into, first I'll start with M&E. So my journey into monitoring and evaluation happened by accident because I'm from a background of statistics. And in statistics, I was going into insurance finance during my third year in Kwame Nkrumah University of Technology in Ghana. And so during my final year, my dissertation, I really wanted to do something in insurance. But I remember my lecturer, she was the only female lecturer under the stats and mathematics department, Dr. Adebanji. She just pushed me and my bestie at the time, and she noticed that I was really passionate about volunteering work. I'm really passionate about international development. And so she mentioned, well, Benedicta, why don't you look into this and see how you can use your skills and to help that field. And so I pivoted my dissertation topic from the basic insurance. No, it wasn't basic, it was quite hectic, but I went into international development because I fell in love with the topic which I had, which was looking at the trend in or predicting infant mortality in Confanoche Teaching Hospital for the next 5 years. And so I use a model called time series model analysis. And like what Amina mentioned, I saw the real life. It was like, okay, mathematics, theorems, what next? I want to see the real life situations on the ground. And so I was so happy I got that project. I worked along with 4 intelligent females, and we were able to present that findings to Confanoche Teaching Hospital. And from there on, I did my national service with an international organization called Global Communities on the project around youth development. And so when I went in there, again, I was trying to figure out what can I use my skills for. So I was tasked to do like a background check, go into the field, work with the community, work with the project beneficiaries or project partners. And so when I did that, I understood that there's a need for more research, a need for more scientific approach to gather data to help projects to measure their impact. And so I fell in love with international development, and currently I work as data and social impact for Kindred. And my academic career has channeled into AI because I'm again passionate about data, but I'm more passionate about using data for the right reasons. So my career journey is in data and AI ethics, and my dissertation during my master's degree at the University of Edinburgh was around the emergence of AI in Ghana healthcare service delivery, because we've seen great evidence of its benefits in healthcare, and mostly the dissertation was around how we can ensure that ethics is in place or is translating across all the process of design, development, and deployments of AI tools out there. So nice to meet you all.
Wow, that's an interesting journey, Benedicta. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so I'll move on to Jenean.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Linda and the team, for inviting us. I feel very privileged to be part of such an esteemed panel. Yeah. So very quickly, my journey began. I was a researcher at the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. And so just to predate that, I was an intern at the state of Texas as a young undergrad. I just completed at WITS in political science, and I was awarded this internship 6 months in the US. And I knew that my love for public administration and public service had began there, and that I wouldn't work outside of the public sector or NGO sector. And so I decided that when I returned, that's where I wanted to be. I scheduled a meeting at the Gauteng Provincial Legislature and shared my interest. And before I knew it, I was invited to come in for an interview, got the job as a researcher, and I stayed for about 2.5 years. After research, they had decided to set up, and I think at the time, there was a lot of talk about developing M&E systems, the importance of government-wide M&E systems. And so, and a position opened up, an office opened up under the Speaker's office. And I moved from research into that role of monitoring and evaluations. And so there was this sort of natural progression. And I think, I like to call research and evaluations first cousins. And so there seemed to have been a natural transition and a fit there, because essentially you were dealing with programs and evaluations, looking at how, potential impact, you're looking at how programs are performing through quarterly reporting, through monthly reporting, through annual reporting. But essentially it was the question around how does the budget, does it really produce what we're aiming to produce? And if not, why not? So I think that kind of had stuck to me for a while and in my research work, and then again, finally joining Clear AA. So I think that's been sort of the pathway for me. But I think at the core of it is the interest in who benefits and how they benefit, and ultimately it's about the public. So that's my story. Thanks, Linda.
All right. Thank you too for sharing your story. Now over to Ruth.
Thanks, and then hi everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm also very honored and impressed by everyone who's here, and with a panel of such strong and experienced and qualified women. It's very daunting. So I'm excited and looking forward to learning from all of you and everyone else as well. To speak very briefly about my journey, I think there's a lot in common between what all of us have said. And I think the main thing that I think is also common for me is that it seems like we all came into MEL accidentally, and we all have a big interest in asking a lot of tough questions. And I think that's actually at the heart of what research, monitoring, evaluation, and learning is, just really having a love of learning. I also stumbled into this completely accidentally, had no plans whatsoever to get into MEL or the impact field. I wanted to be a journalist, which I suppose is adjacent in that is about a lot of questions, and that's always been something that I, like Amina, have been very strong at, is asking questions. I studied international relations and languages, and after doing a few internships with journalism, decided it was just a bit too passive, and so I wanted to do something that was more involved. So here in the UK, I joined a very, very small NGO that had about 3 people in it. I was just an intern, and because there was nobody else there, we were sort of assigning randomly things. Do you want to do the project management? Do you want to do this? And I sort of put my hand up and volunteered to do the initial MEL framework, because it sounded like something where you could ask more questions. And so I did, and I was hooked because, like Jenean said, I was very interested in sort of understanding why things make sense and why they don't make sense, and what the impact is, and what the wider impact of a program may be on a community. I was very lucky to be mentored by some people who are much better at this than I am and much more experienced than I am. And my path took me from this small sort of community development organization to working at the African Leadership Academy in Joburg, where I was also very lucky and privileged to work with some amazing young people when I also was a lot younger myself. And from there, made a jump into the financial inclusion space, which is where my contact with digital innovation really began, and looking at different types of insurance models for different population groups. I then took a brief detour into looking at hostile state information tracking, which also uses a lot of very interesting and innovative technology, and was where I really came into contact with AI for the first time. And one of the things that made me so interested in it is both the use and power of the tool, but also the risks posed by mis and disinformation and what challenges that can present to all of us. From there, I ended up at GSMA, where I work currently as a director of MEL at the Mobile for Development Foundation. And our whole reason of being is really sitting at the intersection of digital technology and social impact. So we look at developing and piloting and scaling different digital solutions through mobile networks that we can use to increase climate resilience, improve access to utilities, and look at widening digital and financial inclusion. And we focus on MEL both on technology, but also on pragmatism. So we really want everything we do to be extremely use-focused, and also to understand the bigger picture and sort of where tech fits in creating this impact that we're all talking about. So that is my journey, and I'm very excited to discuss with you guys.
Exciting. Thank you also for sharing, Ruth. Very interesting. So what I'm getting is that there's the need to be curious. There's also the need to have a passion for doing something. And well, sometimes things don't always go the way we plan. Sometimes we find ourselves in professions that we think that we accidentally found our way there, but you'd actually realize that that's where you're making the most impact as well. And it's also good or important to be solutions oriented as well. Great. So still with you, Ruth, can you please share how you're currently using ICT in your work? You've kind of started us off in that direction. How useful do you find ICT in your work, and how do you currently apply it in what you're currently doing?
Yeah, absolutely. We use ICT, and particularly digital and mobile solutions, in almost everything that we do. And I can speak very briefly more generally about what the GSMA does, and then also maybe a bit more specifically about what we use ICT and tech for in our impact tracking and measurement. As I mentioned, GSMA is really well situated within the mobile network and telecom community. So we have a lot of engagement with the big mobile network operators globally. And so what we look to do is partner those MNOs with startups, grantees, different organizations that are providing avenues for social impact through tech. We also look at piloting different types of technology that can really push forward inclusivity, innovation, and sustainability. And our current focus, like I think a lot of people's are at the moment, is on emergent technology. And our real sort of thematic interest there is on climate resilience. We do a lot of work, for example, with things like connecting IoT sensors to monitor and sort of track coastline recession and what that means for communities who live there. We do a lot of work as well looking at things like mangrove deforestation and sort of agritech, excuse me, and looking at what kind of AI emergent technology services can support regenerative agriculture and increase crop sustainability and reduce food insecurity with the current climate crisis that we face. We support a lot of organizations to do that, and we also have our own teams of in-house experts. from a impact perspective, we use a lot of those tools as well to monitor the changes that we're seeing in the areas that we're working. So one real life example I can give is that we're working in several communities in Indonesia where the primary livelihood is shrimp farming, which has been really compromised by mangrove deforestation because the shrimp and the mangroves are sort of part of the same ecosystem. So we worked with local partners and some of the telecoms that we have partnerships with in Indonesia to develop a digital map that monitors how the coastline is either regressing or recovering. And then we work simultaneously with that tool to sort of understand the change in the environment, but also with local government there so that they can support policies to come into place within communities so that they can actually use that technology efficiently and effectively. One of the big gaps that we see that we really try to address is in the presence of the tech, but also in how that can be applied in a way that is useful in communities as well. Because if you have the tool, it doesn't mean you should use the tool. And I think that's kind of a key thing that we think about as well. In terms of our MEL work, that's one example. We also use a lot of tech, ICT and tech to think about working through large pools of data. We use it in our data analysis. We use it in our data collection, which I'm sure is similar across the panel and for other people in the call today as well. And it really is a very integrated part of what we do. So without taking up more time from anyone, let me stop there.
Great. Thank you so much, Ruth. Okay, moving on to Jenean. Would you want to share how you're using or applying ICT or AI in the work you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Linda. So I think we're not as tech heavy as maybe some of the other panelists, but what we do at ClearA is that we support monitoring and evaluation systems for countries at the national levels. But maybe let me use an example of what we recently did. So we use ChatGPT, the paid version, through what they call prompt engineering. And so there's a lot of work that kind of goes into the input of how you question, the specifics of it. And it's not just asking a basic question. So you really begin to see how when you're very detailed, very specific on the types of prompts that you use. So we were developing a theory of change, which typically involves a client or, country who you're involved with. But because this was a very sensitive process for a government department, and they had asked us to a consultant to initiate this process. So what we needed to at least start with the document. And so we had gone through this process, through some serious prompt engineering and guided on that. And developed a full, it was like a 15-page document, which is very, very detailed, and it gave a solid outline, a very detailed outline of the theory of change and all of the factors that were needed in that particular pillar. Who needed to be involved, the kind of stakeholders that needed to be involved, what the different roles and responsibilities would be. We also did like a comparative based on the topic between 5 sort of top countries that were leading in that specific space. So that was very interesting. And I think one of the best things about it was the amount of time that it took, and I think if we had to do it the old way, which is reading through those reports, reading through different case studies, like 5 countries at that particular system, just the amount of man hours involved was really tremendous. So I think that for me is one of the really, really beneficial things about AI and tech, So that was drafting just a theory of change. I do know of some colleagues that use it a lot in their data analysis and again the same kind of feedback around cutting time. And I think with the increasing demand for evaluations, for monitoring and evaluations from organizations, I don't think one can really cope with the kind of demand by using things the manual way, And my supervisor actually, we've had some webinars where they encourage that use, but of course, use of it ethically. I think there's a lot of things to take into account around, data governance, data privacy, and ethics, and I think one of the things that I always say, in our professional development and training as well, is that you don't want to outsource the intellectual input, when you're using AI. So I think understanding, how to use it in terms of taking the drudgery out of the work. But at the same time, there's still that deep human thinking, and I don't think that can be replaced. And the analysis of the human inputs, that still has to take place. So yeah, I think I will pause there and pass on to my colleagues. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenean. Yeah, I saw that Benedicta was nodding a lot, so I think that you kind of touched the nerve of hers, and
Yeah. Yeah, I'm more excited when conversations around using AI is really not replacing our work or replacing our intellect. It's really as a tool to enable us work faster, and more excited about the ethical part, knowing that it has a limitation, it can hallucinate, it can perform the tasks for us, but we still need a human oversight to assess the type of information we are putting in, the type of information that this tool or, this system is giving us. I would say that for me, in my line of work, as my other colleague mentioned, I don't heavily rely on data tools or digital tools to process the quantum of work that I currently do, because the data set is quite small. But mostly what I've been doing is to use Python, which is also like a language learning tool or a mathematical software, which again, AI is, maybe the background of AI is that it's an upper version or an advanced version of NLP, which is natural language processing models. And so I go back to, the basics of data. AI is data. AI is whatever you give it. AI is mathematics, whatever models that you feed into. And so what I do is to really do sentimental analysis. Maybe if you have several case study and you want to understand the sentiments or the news that is out there, you can do sentimental analysis. You can also do text remix analysis, which is also very easy and fast for you to run your analysis. And so mostly it's around building dashboards, which is around data visualization with either Power BI, there's Tableau tools out there. There's so many tools that data or technology can enable us to do our work better as monitoring and evaluation professionals. And so AI coming in, I see AI as an added-on advantage. Why? Because it can really understand program interventions. So for example, for lack of privacy, I wouldn't mention the company that I'm working with, another company I'm working with. But what we've done is that because we want to understand the type of support that investees need, we've been able to design a platform that really gives them feedback on areas that they need to improve. So when they pitch to us, there's something called investment thesis. So before they come to us, they need to run their thesis or models or presentation through the software, and they are able, the AI or whatever is able to outline the areas where they need to improve on. These areas are actually something that we have fed into the data to identify based on our KPIs, based on our evaluation criteria. And so as part of the process, the last bit of evaluating their pitch deck based on our investment thesis model is to ask them if they want to contact a human person for a one-on-one engagement. So that latter process is very helpful, just so that, because one limitation about AI is that it might want to feed you with all this positive information. And so it being very critical can be very challenging. And that's one limitation that we've realized. And so having a human touch comes in to have an oversight to really correct and validate whatever input or output that this AI system is giving to our partners or our investees that we work with. So that is the only currently AI tool that we're currently using. Also, we do have some pitches coming in where we have a colleague who have developed an AI model to help us in our engagement, because one thing that we've realized is that it's difficult to gather feedback during large engagement session. Is people are tired of survey fatigue. And so we wanted to find out what other interactive ways can we gather information. So this is like a pilot study. He's called Generative Minds in Liverpool, one of my friends, Alex. So he has developed this tool. It's a survey that he displays is doing workshop activities, and you're able to put in all these information and then have real-time solutions to the questions that people are popping up. And based on the data that we fed them, it can really save time in terms of gathering information. And it's an interactive workshop. It's more of like Kahoot, but you see real life information and answers to your question as well. So those are a little bit of the tools that I've come across in my line of work, but mostly in my line of work is around data analysis using Python, using data visualization tools such as Power BI and Tableau. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you too for your great insights. Okay, moving on to Amina.
Yeah, hello. I think I'm the only one who hasn't shared my video. This is because I just got here. I just got to Accra, and I'm not actually looking good. So that's why I actually muted my video. So with using AI tools and then ICT tools, yes, I've used a lot of them. Especially I use AI tools and coming up with mathematical models for reducing energy consumption in IoT sensor networks. So you realize that there are a lot of energy consumption, especially in smart devices. So we need to come up with various ways, especially you see the Android phones we use, and we get to a time that people start complaining, I have battery issues, and a whole lot. And now we are currently adopting to smart devices, and then everything is smart. Our homes, we want them to be smart. We can just command the light to tell the light to be off, and a whole lot. So what I did was to come up with models which could help reduce the energy consumptions in these devices. Aside that, to have and actually I haven't yet made it public available because the data set I used was actually an Indian data set. So trying to implement this within our local, like Ghana or any African country, will kind of be a lot of challenge. This is because of the issue of data sets. So I actually reached out to Google to get data sets to be able to implement this. But because we are still finding it difficult to get data sets, it's a project that I've kept aside, and I'm currently looking at NLP staffs. Where currently I'm looking at speech, but the data set is also another challenge. So looking at the data set out there is not actually a representative of like African. You can't just use a data set and conclude that, okay, I've used this data set and I believe that it will work for the Ghanaian aspect. Taking my mom, for instance, if my mom is speaking English and then I'm speaking English, you realize that there is differences. How does these devices actually differentiate and understand what my grandma is saying? So what I did is to come up with my own intelligent chatbot where you interact with the system. Then the system tells you what to do. You read various passages. After reading the passages, it asks of your ethnicity, your age, and a whole lot. Then I get the audio in my drive or whatever space that I use. Then I train these various data sets on the model that I've already built on. So these are some of the few things I'm actually using AI and stuff. So currently, some of the AI tools that I do use is, everyone knows about ChatGPT. So currently I'm using ChatGPT Premium, and also I use Gemini, then I use Perplexity, and there are a whole lot of AI tools that I use for my what's the name, for literature review. It depends on what actually I'm working on. Yeah. Some of the AI tools cannot do all the things. So we have some AI tools that are meant for specific tasks. taking Mino Health, for instance. Mino Health is specifically meant for health-related images and stuff. So if you give it a paper or give it to something not related to health, even though it might generate something for you, but it tends to be hallucinating other things for you. So it actually depends on the task. That's what I will say. It depends on the task and then the kind of AI tools you use. And one thing for sure is what the AI will actually generate for you is not 100% correct. And with that, you still need human intervention, as my other bosses have said. You still need human intervention to look through to see what, whether the AI tool has generated, whether it fits on what you are working or not. I quite remember I was working on something and then I gave the task to ChatGPT to actually generate things from. It was actually generating things beyond my imagination and stuff, which wasn't actually true. So what I can conclude and then say is that, yes, you can use AI tools actually to facilitate your work, to make things much easier, but you absolutely have to go through whatever it generates for you. And we also have to be this thing when we are looking at ethical and then representative of data set for us to be able to talk much about the work we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you to Amina. You really touched on something that I was going to bring up about ethics and best practices for the use of AI in our work as RMEL professionals. But I'll come back to that. I just wanted to chip in a few of the uses that we've heard so far. So using AI in the area of agri-tech, climate resilience, using AI for data analytics or data analysis, research, and also to develop a theory of change. And then also how we are using AI in the area of energy use as well, as Amina has mentioned. So very interesting uses. And yeah, there are lots of other uses out there, but these were the ones I captured in the course of your submissions. Okay, so moving on. So I'd like to find out from Jenean, what's your perceptions were even before this whole AI thing became, big out there. Yeah, what were your fears? What are your concerns, your perceptions, both positive and negative?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Linda. I mean, I must be quite honest. I was quite apprehensive in the beginning. I felt like technology would be somehow taking over our brain. And I kind of reflect on just how we don't know cell phone numbers as a silly example. We might know 1, 2, 3 numbers at best, like, our significant others, maybe mother, father, or sibling. But I kind of had that perspective. I'm like, but there's certain development that must happen at the brain, in the brain. And so if I almost saw it as outsourcing, that capacity. So I was definitely apprehensive. And then I think as it grew and I became a little bit more open to it, like I said, my PhD supervisor was showing us some of the tools that are available, particularly the repetitive stuff, So I think when one was open to it and looking at how it can really save time, looking at how it can cut, like I said, the drudgery out of some of our activities, and actually make you more productive, more efficient, more effective, and I don't think it's a case of replacing what you can do. We already know how to enter data, we know how to clean data, but why take 50 hours when that could be done in a very short space of time, and you can use your skills and your time to do other more strategic stuff. So yeah, so I think it definitely started out where I was apprehensive, and I think now, I'm definitely more curious, more open to using different tools and seeing what works best. And I think there's also a lot of competition now between tools, which is good for the end user, because that means that they're constantly trying to outdo one another, but ultimately making it great for the end user. So I do think that there are a lot of advantages, and I think, like I said, one still needs to be cautious. And I think, questions around equity, I think that was also a concern for me. And I think anytime you're talking about technology, there's the risk of increasing that gap, the haves versus the have-nots, and how do we, for example, at a community-based level, at grassroots level, how do we ensure that women are learning at that level? How do we ensure that communities are involved in the process, of technology? So I think there's still those concerns, and making sure that in UN language, that nobody gets left behind. So how do we ensure that sort of wider inclusion? And I think those are still some of the concerns that I have, and certainly concerns that we should appreciate at a broader level. Thanks.
Great, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Ruth, how about you?
I think I would mostly agree with Jenean, to be honest. I think my initial concerns were around similar things. I was apprehensive about the use, certainly the ethics and certainly the equity. I agree. Like, I think for pretty much everyone, as soon as you start using these tools, you are wowed by the speed with which you can get things done and how quickly you can look at large volumes of information. And it certainly cuts hours and hours of time out of things. So it's hard not to be a fan. But I think when looking at things like data collection, and regulatory frameworks and ethical frameworks that are in place for these types of tools, given where different countries are on that spectrum of having developed those policies, you run a risk of exploitative use of people's data and AI. And one of the big questions that I have and still have, and that we work to sort of understand more and promote positive applications of, is transparency, consent, understanding of what the people's data is going to be used for, particularly around generative AI applications. And so that is, I think, something that nobody has the answer to, that we're all still grappling with. How do we figure this out in an inclusive way? And to echo also what Jenean said around inclusivity, we work a lot to widen digital inclusion gaps, or not to widen, to close digital inclusion gaps through our programming. And one of the big focus areas that we have is that this is in many ways accelerating that gap. And so how do we both use AI to support us to close that gap, but also make sure it doesn't at the same time widen it further, because people are being left behind because of basic things like access to the types of devices that you can access AI on. So those are all considerations that we have. But I think, as I said at the beginning, anyone who begins to use these tools can immediately see their advantage. And so I think it's about making sure the rollout of those tools are positive, ethical, and inclusive.
Great, thank you so much, Ruth. All right, Benedicta, what about you?
Okay, so to be honest, I think for me, from a background of inequalities and studying sociology, my mind around AI was around, okay, it's like the next big thing, because whilst working in data is like, okay, we have Excel, and then we pivoted to Python, we pivoted to Tableau, we pivoted to, it's like so many tools, so many over like consumption going on. And you tend to pause and wonder, when would this end? Again, these tools are really good, but over a long period of time, looking at history, you've realized that data now is like the new gold. And so if you don't have data, you can't really validate your results, or you can't say that you're making impact. And so the more we put more priority on these two, the more we make them the topmost way of understanding or analyzing data or getting results done. And so we tend to forget other indigenous way of getting information or getting data or analyzing data. For example, an approach can be using dance, which is an indigenous way in our community, and speaking to, maybe if a chief is coming to announce to a community, they might want to do an adowa to signify something and communicate to the community. We might lose touch of this indigenous form of communication, indigenous form of collecting data, and we might want to classify people's responses to fit mathematical cells that is aligned to this model. So just to not talk too much tech, but to bring it down for everybody to understand. So what happens is that when we get the data to train these AI models, we tend to, there's something we call classification. In M&E, we often sometimes do that. It's like when we ask for impact reports and we notice that the results that is coming in is not under the, classified thing, we tend to, okay, if it's male, female, other, then we'll try and classify them in these boxes. And what happens is that we tend to exclude other unique way or other unique responses that are coming in to fit only the accepted norm or accepted categories, and that also can advance inequalities, exclude people, exclude people's intellect, or really we miss out on so many things, and that is not good, which is a big issue about AI as well. And so recognizing that in as much as AI is a good tool to help us really work well, we need to also question ourselves as to how best we can use the tool to advance our work by not excluding others, by making sure that we are not actually missing out on the other data that is very unique that out there to just fit what we need to communicate about. Again, I would also like to say that I think my colleagues also mentioned something around ethical, something around trustworthy. Trustworthy here doesn't mean that we trust the organization developing the AI. Actually, trustworthy means that we know why this AI was developed, we know the data this AI was developed on, and why we need to implement AI. And so leaving from here, I think one of the big asks I will ask everybody to do is that when going into your organization, you need to pose key questions around, do we really need AI into our systems? If you don't have the answer, then you don't need it. You might want to jump on the AI train because it's the most new thing, which you should be aware of to be able to communicate about. But you really need to know why you're using it, where the data is coming from. Is the data coming from Twitter? Is it data coming from an online source? Is it going to harm people? Ask these critical questions. And when you have answers to that is ethics. Really understanding these critical questions and asking the big, difficult questions, the right and the wrong questions, so that as a team, you can come together and deliberate and move forward, whether you need to implement AI in your process or you don't need to implement AI, So I'll leave it there and pass it on to my other colleague. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. All right. So Amina, thank you so much, Benedicta. You've really shared a lot, and I'll be coming back to you to share your thoughts on ethics. I'll start with you, but I'd like to hear from Amina what her perceptions were about AI before she even started working in that space.
Please, can you come again?
So what were your perceptions about AI? What were your thoughts, or what were your concerns?
All right. One thing about me is that I never thought for one bit that AI would take over our job. That one was for sure. Initially, when I heard the word AI, I was just curious of knowing, okay, we are talking about AI. What can this model or what can this tool actually help us do? So that was when everything started. So started learning about AI, knowing the fairness, biasness, and then what are some of the ways in which we can actually use this AI. As one of my colleague rightly said, it's not everything that we can use AI, like we actually need AI in. There are some things that we just need a common logic or a normal statistic model or stuff to use to solve the problem, not actually implementing huge models that at the end of the day, you spend huge amount of Yeah, hello, sorry about that. You spend huge amount of money to bring out these two, and at the end of the day, you don't effectively use them. So my perception about AI from the beginning, it was just, what can these two actually solve? So that was how it all began.
All right. Thank you so much, Amina. All right. Wow, it's so interesting when you're having a good time, how time flies.
Yeah.
We'll try and make time so that our participants can ask questions. So I'll just like us to touch on a bit on ethics and best practices. Yeah. So starting with you, Benedicta, your insights on best practices, like how that is working in the work you're doing, and also in terms of ethics, like what we should be mindful of. Are there any guiding principles for us as we use AI?
Yeah, thank you. So in using AI currently, I don't know if our audience is international, but I'll speak specifically for Africa and also in the UK, a little bit in the UK. My background is mostly from Ghana. Currently in Ghana, we don't have an AI framework, which means that as my Amina mentioned, it's a challenge to get data. And to model an AI system on data that is not culturally effective or it's not culturally sound, it doesn't really reflect the people that it's going to use. It's going to be a damage or it's going to be a disaster. What happens is that whatever information that we fed into this model is going to naturally exclude people. So, for example, there's been case studies and there's been several research led by people who have done AI studies for years. For example, there's Joy, who is a Ghanaian, and the state, her organization is called Justice League for AI. I'll put the links there. And so her research topic is really around AI not being able to scan her face as a Black individual. And it started years back, but due to those errors, she was able to identify that the AI model that she trained was only able to pick white faces. Okay, so she did a research around unmaxing AI and looking at the challenges that these tools bring. And so what I learned from those research, or what everybody has learned from those research, is that there's limitation to these models, and we need to actually start asking the questions at the beginning of developing these models. If we are able to document that I got my data from India, hence there's a limitation that it can be applied to a Ghanaian context. It could be because we have the same human feature, but in terms of contextual analysis, it will not. So being able to document all these things in your design process is an ethical approach. You are translating ethics in your design approach. Secondly, I would also say that who is on the team? AI is not developed by one person, and you need to engage everybody on the team. You don't need to just engage. I think one challenge that I've had as an M&E person working in Ghana is that mostly when it comes to data and reporting, it sits with just M&E. I don't know for other organizations, but in my early beginnings, I was so, I wouldn't use the word, but I found it difficult, trying to move into other spaces because it was like, oh, you're just M&E, just do the report and give it to us. But we need to not work in silos when we're dealing with AI. We need to bring everybody on board to ask these questions around where's the data coming from, what are the data privacy that we've put in place, who is our target audience or beneficiaries of these applications. In terms of energy consumptions at the moment and looking at climate change, is this model going to, because the system run on a lot quantum of data and needs a lot of energy to work. Who are we excluding in terms of if we develop these AI models? Is it accessible in a village or in my hometown in Cape Coast? No. So how can we make this more accessible to other people across the world? We also need to look at that's the inclusivity aspect. We also need to look at the trustworthy, which I mentioned earlier on, beyond the normal technical AI ethics around fairness and bias, around transparency. We need to also look at it in our cultural aspect in terms of how are we designing this AI in our language, to able to recognize our language. I'm not a native English speaker, and so if I use this model, who am I excluding in my hiring processes? If I adopt AI as an HR, as part of my HR processes, and in the models, I say that, okay, if anybody who has a higher degree, maybe went to Kwame Nkrumah University, means that the person is of high value, then you're going to exclude someone who went to Presbyterian University of good value as well. So all these things are all based on the data that we use to train the model, and also recognizing that AI is not the superpower. AI is not going to replace our job. It's actually us that is going to work with AI. And it's not the superpower, it's not the magic bullet, it's not the, the robots that we all dream that is going to solve all our problems. It's us commanding whatever system to work for us. So we need to know its limitation as well. And lastly, there's been research around AI reducing human intellect. In terms of not necessarily cognitive skills, actually, in terms of ensuring that whatever information that AI is feeding us, we need to ensure that we get to a stage where it's not really becoming the superior answer to everything. And so, for example, in my research that I did around assessing the emergence of AI in Ghana healthcare sector, one of the challenges or one of the findings that we are looking to really communicate about in our AI literacy is that ensuring that AI doesn't have the final say in medical imagery, but the doctor actually has the final say. And when we generally accept AI in our medical system, we don't disprove the doctor's results over the computer's results or mathematical results, but we ensure that the doctor have an oversight of whatever information that the AI is feeding us. So we need to always place human value at the apex of the AI framework and ensure that we are working hand in hand with these agents. And I'll pause here because of time, but I would have loved to go on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can see you're very passionate about this subject. It's your area, so it's understandable.
I would say that it took me quite a number of years because I didn't have a lot of information while doing this research in Ghana. And I'm happy that Amina Amina is doing so much work. And whenever she says something around languages, not being able to recognize the voice, these are all the things I found out, and I'm really excited about the work you're doing and the other guys doing amazing work in Ghana, like Minor Health AI. Thank you.
Thank you too. Okay, because of time, Jenean and Ruth, if you want to also share your thoughts around ethics, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, I would just like the panel to share how women can empower themselves better in using AI for good. So starting with you, Jenean, and feel free to also comment on the ethics around AI if you want to.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, thanks, Linda. I think I don't want to repeat anything that because I definitely agree with the points that Benedict made around ethics and validity, transparency of data. But I think I just want to touch on number one, the context and how extremely important that is, and being culturally responsive. I think also we need to avoid and oftentimes researchers, evaluators are accused of being extractive, and so I think this is something that we really need to be cautious about to ensure that whilst we need to collect data, and I think to do it in a way that's very respectful, that is culturally sensitive, and to share feedback, because we come in typically and collect the data that we need, but how often do we share those results, and feed it back to the communities or the spaces that we're collecting from? Yeah, and I think the other point that was made earlier, which I really respect, is about the validity and the importance of indigenous knowledge. And I think that is so critical to include that and to value that and to acknowledge that there are processes that existed before technology. There are processes that existed long before, our fancy instruments designs, and there were ways that communities gathered, and and there was order, and those were specific to those communities. So I do think that we need to mix and match. I think where technology is helping us to do things more in a more streamlined way, but without necessarily cutting out of our culture and our oral traditions and some of the things that we have grown to value and still holds value. So I think it must be used as a complementary tool. So that's on the ethics side that I would want to highlight. But to just close on the the things about the question about how women can support each other. I think communities of practice, joining communities of practice, staying in touch, like forums like these, Women in Data Science. I think being intentional about what it is that you want to learn. There's a lot of free software out there. There's a lot of free courses. And I think just, like we started out by saying, the curiosity. And that I think sometimes, with these new technologies, there's that initial apprehension and the fear of tech. But I think, when we change our mindset and shift it to one of how can this help me in the work that I do, I think, something that Ruth mentioned, about being lucky to have a mentor. And I think that makes such a huge difference in one's career, is that if you can get mentoring, if you can coach, and even as leaders in this space, as people that might be in senior management, take the opportunities to mentor somebody or to coach somebody. And to be able to give, back. And I think those are some very, very valuable ways that we can connect and build skills and, hold workshops where we can share knowledge. So I think those are some definite ways that we can, help one another. Thanks.
Thank you too. So I'll move to Ruth.
Sure, I'll speak very quickly because I know we're very short on time, but just big applause to everyone who's spoken today. I think really, really valuable points, and I agree with all of it. On the ethical frameworks, I would really echo what both Benedicta and Jenean have said, particularly around the role of people and humans in applying these tools. I mean, they are tools at the end of the day, and certainly where we have seen them be most effective, inclusive, and sustainable is when they are applied alongside what people are already doing or to enhance those processes that we know to be effective. So I think that's a really important thing to bear in mind. And the other thing is around data privacy and protection and making sure that people know where their data is going. They have a say in that. And certainly something that pops up in, I think, use of this technology and ML is around de-identification, making sure anonymity is preserved. And when you have something like AI that moves automatically through data, making sure you just check and check and check again for things like that. But I'll stop there on that part. In terms of empowering women through use of this technology, I think there's actually a point here that's linked to the ethics, which is that, as Benedicta said, this technology is built by people, and oftentimes it is built in those people's image, and those people frequently are men. And so if you want to widen the use of this and make it more inclusive, using and feeding these tools within reason is a great way to do that. I would also echo what Jenean said about communities of practice. I would really shout out the MERL Tech Initiative. I'll put it in the chat here as well. If anyone is a part of that or has participated in any of their discussions, it's a women-run international forum of experts on AI, particularly through M&E and research. It's got really active discussion forums. It's a great place to talk to people. They hold events, share a lot of resourcing. That's a great way to do that as well. And I think forums like these two, sharing information and taking the time to listen to each other and support each other.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ruth. All right, Benedicta.
So I'll touch base on the last question. In terms of empowerment, I would say that do reach out to a sister out there, a colleague out there, mostly a colleague, because as women, we tend to meet each other in other spaces. And whenever you are inspired by other people, like this amazing panelists, do reach out. Don't be afraid. I know I've seen Linda on LinkedIn for several years, but we've never had a chance to, engage. So I'm really happy that she shouts out to me on LinkedIn, and that's how we can grow our community and empower each other. So I'm looking forward to connect with each one on LinkedIn. I'm happy to engage with anybody as well to help in terms of AI literacy. But most importantly, in empowering women, we need to ensure that we are lifting each other up. We are celebrating women. We are celebrating our successes. And whenever we enter rooms to speak, we should always bring other people along, mention other people in the room as well, so that they can also grow and make some connections out there. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you too. Amina, please, your thoughts about how women can be empowered to use AI in their work, especially male professionals.
All right, I think they've said almost everything, but there's one thing. Most of the times, you do reach out to people, especially taking this workshop, for instance. There are a lot of experts here. And most of us, when we reach out to them, when you just say hi, that's it. You never reach out to them again on what you are working and a whole lot. You see, you can't force someone, you can, even though you can connect, but you have to keep on with the communication and then the network. So in case there is any opportunity somewhere, or the person can click that, oh, I know so the person can just easily link you to another person, and that is how it goes. And also a lot of education. So there's also one thing, there is women in machine learning. Currently in Ghana, we have something called Women in Machine Learning. We also have and they take in short courses for people who want to dive in data visualization and then this Python and a whole lot, which people can easily join and then learn from. That is just my thought. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so we'll just take one or two questions from the audience. If there's any burning question, I know some questions in the chat have been answered, but okay, so there's a question from Vida. I think it's a very important question that we can look at. So she's asking, please, do I need some IT competencies to be effective in my MERL work? Any of the panelists can respond to this.
I think for me, in terms of competency, you just need to be curious enough, because I started off right from Excel, when I was doing my undergrad in Kwame Nkrumah University. But then when I moved into the practical aspects, I noticed that I'm interested in how can I solve this? How can I collect data without using paper? So I went into learning Open Data Kit, which was a tool you collect data offline with, ODK with Kobo Collect. And then I was curious around how can we map. And so I learned based on my curiosity, and there's YouTube as well. YouTube has a lot of resources, even to date. Sometimes when I want to, when my code is not working, I go on YouTube and just check, so be curious enough. There's so many resources out there. There's YouTube, which will be helpful. Yeah.
Great. Any more additions?
Yeah,
okay.
To add to that, I also started from nothing. So I did BAc mathematics. It was just like pure math, and the only software that we learned was MATLAB, which I never even took serious. So it was after first degree, then I started learning from scratch. So I think there are a lot of resources disposed that you can actually use to learn. As she rightly said, you just have to be curious. You just have to be curious, and also you just have to take one tool at a time. You can't just learn all the tools at a go. So you start from one. So let's say that if you're learning Python, you start from Python, you learn. When you're okay with it, then you move to another software. In that way, as she rightly also said, there's YouTube there. You go out there to watch. Even when I've never built a chatbot before, but actually this was actually my first time building a chatbot. I got all this information online, and then I kept all my posts together, and it's running. So we just have to be curious and things will be fine.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Amina, also for responding to the question. Okay, so I'd like to invite any of the participants to ask. You can unmute. We're already out of time, but just one question from anyone or a comment. Anyone? Okay, it looks like everyone is fine. Okay, so in the absence of any questions from participants, I'll just ask each panelist to give their final words, starting with Amina. Just a takeaway for all of us.
Yeah, my takeaway is don't be like, let's try to embrace technology and then embrace changes and then be willing to learn and then adopt to these new technologies, and you actually fit in the world in code, AI and stuffs. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Benedicta?
Thank you very much for this platform. I would say that my last final words would be that be curious to learn. As a woman, it can be intimidating when you're talking about technology in some spaces because it's mostly dominated by men. But be curious, be bold, and do empower other young ladies out there. You can go into your communities. There's some little girl really wanting to do a career in STEM, and you showing up and empowering them will make a difference in their life, not just in her life, but other young girls out there that she will impact in the future. So please do remember to impact other people out there and be curious to learn and then embrace technology and know when you want to use these tools for yourself. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Benedicta. Jenean?
Yeah, definitely. I would say continue the curiosity. I think be intentional about what you want to achieve, share. I think definitely share the successes, impact stories, successful stories, network as much as possible. And I would say definitely pay it forward where there are opportunities to, share in workshops, where there are opportunities to mentor, to coach, to be intentional about passing skills on.
Great. Ruth?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks everyone for input today. It's been amazing to hear from everyone, and I personally have learned a lot. I think the last thing that I would say is that nobody knows what they're doing in this space, so not to be intimidated. Everyone's learning as we go. So there's no imposter syndrome. Jump in, get your hands dirty. We figure these things out by trialing. And I think sharing not only your successes, but your failures so that we can all learn from them and we can figure out where those barriers and those touch points that we need to really come together on. And then, as everyone else has said, don't be a stranger. I think approaching impact work generally and many other things in life is best done as a community. So responding and reaching out as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for gracing our session today with their expertise. Thank you, Amina. Thank you, Benedicta. Thank you, Jenean and Ruth. Thank you for making time to be part of the second edition of the Women in Monitoring and Evaluation Forum. All right, so I would like to invite Madame Dede, coordinator of the Ghana Monitoring and Evaluation Forum, to give her vote of thanks or final remarks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. It's been a great evening. As you can hear, I'm still in traffic trying to get home. So it's been a great evening, very informative. I think I can only say what the others have said. Let's be curious, let's stay in touch, and let's help each other. We will definitely come back to you for more information and to build some capacity. Thank you. Over to you, Lynn.
All right. Thank you so much, Madam Didi. All right. So to our participants, we are grateful that you all made time to be here with us. But before you leave, we would like you to provide feedback on today's forum. We want you to access the form in the chat. So please take some time to reflect on what you've heard today and provide us with feedback so that we can find ways to improve, we can network, and even do this forum much better in the future. All right, so at this juncture, I would like to invite Daniel Cote to give us the closing prayer. Daniel, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Over to you.
Gracious Lord, we bless and exalt you. We thank you for such an opportunity to learn. We pray for all resource personnel for knowledge that they've shared. We pray for strength for them. We pray for the enablement to dive more into this AI, to be more resourceful, more impactful in our field of work as male personnel. In Jesus' name, we pray thanksgiving. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And on this note, we'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And my name is Linda Nsifo. I've been your moderator for today. It's been a pleasure leading our discussion today. Thank you all and enjoy the rest of the year as it comes to an end. Bye.
Thank you very much, Linda, for convening us.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.